Yes, Peter.
Okay, greeting everyone. I'm Wahid Rustam Khil, EESD Journalism candidate. I would like to welcome Ms. Nandini Parikh, Canada correspondent from Mahabahu and an expert in public relations, corporate and government communication and marketing, conducting our webinar on journalistic ethics, balancing the truth and responsibility, with the postgraduate certificate in strategic marketing communications and her role as a career peer monitor at Conestoga College. Nandini brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the discussion, making her an invaluable guide in navigating the complex landscape of ethical journalism. Thank you for taking out time. Over to you, ma'am, Miss Nandini. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, is my voice audible?
And
Ma'am, you can continue. Thank you. It's great to know about your background. So I have just introduced you
sure,
now,
sure,
and you can
sure,
continue.
sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So good evening, everyone. As I said, my academic background also stems from journalism, which I've done my bachelor's in, which introduced me to this world. I've done a little bit of live reporting, digital journalism for some time, and I also written multiple articles for Mahabahu. So, it's from my personal, I'm not pursuing journalism right now, but it's my personal passion of writing stories which matters. So I will try to share the brief knowledge that I have around this topic, and I hope you all enjoy this session as well. So today we are going to explore the cornerstone of journalism. Our journalism stands on this, which we call is ethics. Without ethics, I don't see that a true journalist or a true journalism would exist in this world. So, as a journalist, we play a pivotal role in the society because we are the ones who give voices to voiceless. We are the ones who make the power accountable. We are the ones who make sure that the democracy exists. So we play a very important role in the society, and hence we need to make sure that we follow all the ethical standards so that we still have the people's trust instilled in us. Because if not, um, no matter what we write, no matter what we cover, we'll never be able to gain the trust of people. And hence we'll try to understand that what are some ethical standards that journalists needs to follow. We will also try to understand some of the biases that we might have, and of course the strategies to mitigate those challenges. Okay, so in whenever I'm doing the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Okay, and if you want to have a little discussion as well, keep the floor open and everybody can have a very beautiful discussion as well. Okay, so a little bit about me, which we have already done. So we will start our presentation with this a little game. Okay, so just give me a thumbs up if everybody is ready, and I will just start with the presentation. Okay. So is everybody having the screen called ethical situations? Okay, so there will be few ethical situational questions that journalists face in real life, and there will be three options on your screen. So you have to select the options which you feel is appropriate in that situation. There is no right or wrong answers because ethics is something that is very personal. It's subjective to us, right? So there is no right and wrong answer in this quiz. Just feel free to explore what you feel is right in that situation. And And all the answers are anonymous, so I won't know who have answered what. We'll just have a percentage of what's coming up in here, okay? Is everyone good? Okay, so let's start with our first question. So, you are covering a protest which involves brief violence. Should you focus on the violence or the peaceful majority while covering a protest? Your options are: first, focus on the violence while writing that news article, focus on the peaceful majority, or include both perspectives. So what do you think would be the way to go in this ethical situation if you are writing a news article in here?
I think putting both perspective is a good thing to go ahead with because it will give both the views to the audience.
So everyone can select the options and do the submit. So we will see a percentage also coming up on the screen as well. And everybody's feel free to pitch in and give your thoughts on it as well.
I can't see any options here.
Mhm.
I can't see any options here.
Okay, only questions are coming.
Not even questions.
Okay.
Open it in your mobile device. It will work.
Is my is problem at my side?
Mobile device.
Let's see. Okay,
In
got
the
it.
top, it will be showed a question.
Okay.
I've seen 4 students have answered. I'll just get to know how many of you have given your answers in here. So please feel free to explore your opinion. So
Guys, if you have
whenever
a
you're
problem, change or refresh your website. It works because I have already experienced this one. Just refresh it, and you will have again the slide.
Thank you, Wahid. So this is a situation which you will see in your daily life if you are writing news articles or covering an incident where you have to see uh, what should I include in my article. And when we write as a journalist, we have to try to make sure that we can cover as many opinions as possible, right? Um, Not everything can be equal, but just to give all the sides the equal representation as well. So this is not just in context to a protest, but it is in context to all the articles that you may write. Should I go to the next question?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. So here is the next question. So there is a source who provides you with some exclusive information about a health crisis, but refuses to be named. Do you run the story without verifying all the facts or not? Your answers is yes, because it's urgent, it's a health crisis. Second, no, you wait for the verification of getting the facts right. Or is it C, you run it, but you run it with a disclaimer that all facts might not be true. What would you do in a situation? Does anybody wants to say on this thing?
I think we should wait for the verification of the facts because uh, in the digital world, when
Yes.
we share some information, it spreads very fast, and there is a possibility that is just misinformation, and we might add more to the chaos rather than solving the problem. So I believe we should wait for the facts.
Sure. Thank you, Divya. Hafizullah, do you want to say something?
Yes, ma'am. So please, can you repeat the questions regarding the health crisis?
So a
That
source
I'm.
yeah. So there is a source. So there is an anonymous person who provides you with some exclusive information about the health crisis, but they don't want them to be named, right? So do you run the story without verifying all the facts? So the questions are yes, because it's a health crisis, it's urgent, you need to inform the public, or you will wait for a verification, or you will run it with a disclaimer.
Yeah, regarding the information about the health crisis, we must do it immediately. So, because at the time of emergency and the time of emergency, we must do an actions which is required. And after the completion of the actions, then we must do it, verify if it was necessary.
Yes. Thank you, Afzullah. Wahid, do you want to say something? I
My
see you raised
answer
your
to this
hand.
question is no. Actually, I would run the story without verifying. I wouldn't run any story without verifying all the facts. While the exclusive information might be tempting, actually, journalist ethics requires verifying the accuracy of the information through the multiple sources before publishing. And running a story
So,
without verification could lead to spreading like misinformation or misleading and harming the individuals or communities. In my perspective, instead, I would work to find additional sources to collaborate information and ensure the story's accuracy before publishing. Whatever we are doing, we're supposed to just confirm it in advance, and then we have to like say yes or no. Without verifying, I don't think so that it works properly.
yeah, so you're absolutely right, Wahid. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Welcome.
Yes, so yeah, so facts are very important. Whenever we write an article, they should be very objective and they should be very fact-based. So one should always try to make sure that whatever you are writing, it should be verified, it should be true, so that you don't have to face the consequences after that. So you're not spreading the disinformation. Okay. Should we go to the next question?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. So, should a journalist's social media presence reflect their personal views or should they remain strictly professional? A, reflect personal views, or B, remain professional, or C, a mix of both. So, we all have our social media pages, and if you're a journalist, or there are so many journalists who have their social media presence. So, should they use the social media to reflect their personal views, or they should remain strictly professional? So, what's your opinion on this?
Ma'am, I think the journalist should reflect to the professional and should get respect to the privacy of someone by regarding my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Afizullah. That's also a bit of true. Uh, Sally, do you want to say something? We'll go
Yes,
with
ma'am.
Sally and
I
then
feel
Wahid, you
that
can take the floor.
okay, so I feel like journalists can also put their views on social media as long as they remain professional, even when they use their personal social media pages, they can also remain as professional as they can. That's my view.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Sally, for sharing your thoughts. Wahid, do you want to take the floor?
Yes, of course, ma'am. Actually, journalists' social media presence should, I guess, strictly professional, but somehow we can say that it's okay to show some personality, like showing their personality, perspectives, their personal views should not compromise their objectivity or credibility as a journalist, but everyone has the right and their own views. So actually, it's essential to maintain a clear boundary between the personal and professional opinions to avoid the conflicts of interest, and ensure the trustworthy of reporting. Strictly professional is like acceptable, but actually, it's not like that. A journalist also have the right to judge, but as a professional or as a profession, it's not like this. They have to be strictly professional, I think.
Sure. You're very much correct in this situation. Thank you, Wahid. So, yeah, social media is usually everyone uses for their personal opinion. There should not be any strict boundaries of a journalist that they cannot, because we are humans. We also have a perspective. So we might use our social media to express our opinion, but we should be very clear that this is your personal stand and it does not go with your journalistic writing or the organizations that you're working with. Because what happens is sometimes that if there is no clear distinction between the two, what reporting that you are doing, it will be assumed to be biased. People will start connecting that with your personal opinions, which will reflect that you are having a biased opinion on the issues that you are trying to talk about. So you may use it, but you have to might have to use it with a little bit of caution, making a clear boundaries between your professional and your personal life, right? So, and if you want to stay strictly professional, that's also your choice. There is nothing wrong in it. But you just need to make sure that your integrity or your identity as a journalist does not harm in this situation, right?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the question is, in your perspective, what's your idea for that? Are you going to be as a strictly professional, or like just sharing your own views? Because, ma'am, it's not like that, I guess, to be a journalist and not whatever is coming to your mind and brain. And is it okay to also speak like that? Like, this is my idea, but as a journalist, can we like say that this is my idea, but as a journalist, so like this
Oh,
is
sure.
right.
Like in my opinion, I would use my social media to express my opinion, but that is also in a way, and of course, it has to be clearly stated that it is separate from my professional writing that I might be doing. This is just my strictly a personal opinion on a particular issue, but it also matters if I'm trying to speak on diverse topics, right? For example, if I might be a little bit favored to one political party, right? As a journalist, I might be writing articles against them as well if there are any wrongdoings. So whenever I'm writing on social media, I should speak about everything. Of course, if somebody is doing good, I should speak good about that. I cannot keep criticizing, or if I cannot keep praising the same thing, right? So if I'm using the social media, I would speak on everything then. Because if I start speaking on only one side, that might get reflected on my work, or people might start associating me to that, right? So I would definitely use social media as a platform where you get your opinion to be shared, but yeah, with a clear distinction and making sure that I'm also diverse in whatever I speak. So that's my personal opinion on this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Let's go to probably the last question. So, should journalists accept gifts or favors from sources or organizations they cover? Yes, if it is not influencing reporting. No, because it's a conflict of interest. Or C, only in certain situations. What would you do? Should you accept gifts or favors from a source or organization?
Ma'am,
The
of
source
course,
which are you
no.
referring?
Hello?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
From whom you recovering or someone? or organization which are you working with?
No, this is from organizations. For example, if you are covering a business, okay, a story of them, but you accept gifts or favors, or of course, it also happens in a lot of situations that a source that wants to give you the information, would you accept gifts or favors from them? So what would you do in this situation? Organization is somebody, or it's a business, or it's an entity that you might be covering. It might be a individual person as well, for example, political figures. So what would you do as a journalist?
By my opinion, not, because the getting the favor from someone, it will be make you obligated to accept some rules and regulations and some uh, I means to talk about his ideas and follow his ideas and what instructions they are want to give you, and you must follow this. So it will be effect on the journalism rules and journalism systems. So the journalist must be independent, not be in the dependency of someone by cause of some materialism.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Hafizullah. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Wahid, and
Actually,
I
man,
see. Yeah, go ahead.
journalists should maintain a professional distance and avoid any actions that could be like perceived as influencing their reporting or creating bias. So, accepting gifts or favors can create a conflict of interest and compromise their objectivity. Like, they shouldn't go for this and damage it will damage their credibility also. For a journalist, the most important thing is the credibility. And I don't think so. After doing this stuff like accepting the gifts, favors, this stuff, absolutely, this person will damage their credibility like 100%. Like, no
Yeah,
one can trust these journalists anymore. So,
sure. You're absolutely correct, Wahid. Sally, you want to say something? I see you have raised your hand.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. Go
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am. I feel like as a journalist, when you are covering a story or writing about something, for you to accept a favor from the people that you are supposed to read about or anything is a compromise. Like, how are you going to say what is, if there's a side of it's something that happens, if it's a bit harsh, how are you going to go for them if you accept something? Because by you accepting a gift makes you like compromise, to not wanting to be on a bad side. All you have to do as a journalist is to tell what is true, what is true about anything that happened. So if anything that happened that day, no.
Hello. I think I cannot hear you, Sally.
Maybe she dropped out because of internet.
Okay, no problem. Uh, so yeah, this is our Kate. Oh, you have one more question. So a news outlet faces pressure from an advertiser to alter a story. What should a journalist do in this situation? A, maintain the original story and integrity. B, alter the story to appeal the advertiser. Or C, negotiate with the advertiser for a compromise on the story. So if you are in a situation where you are writing an article on a particular topic, but there is a lot of pressure coming from a particular advertiser who are a regular funder to the news organization. So what would you do in this situation? And this is a very, very common a situation that happens in a lot of news organization. So what would you as a journalist do in this situation? Or what would you pitch into your organization to do? Yes, Wahid?
ma'am, it's very hard question actually, but the point is the journalist should refuse to alter the story and maintain editorial independence. If necessary, they should be willing to lose their advertisers' business rather than compromise like the integrity of the reporting. I don't think so. It's a very good idea for this. The journalist's primary responsibility, actually, ma'am, is their audience. Uh, Actually, ma'am, I suggest you guys to watch. There is a very good series by the name of uh, The Scam of 1992 of Arshad
Yeah,
Mehta. This is
yeah,
my favorite series. I have seen the power of a journalist, a one who have destroyed 5,000 crore Indian rupees with their journalistic skills, and we should like really appreciate that journalist. To be honest, I was watching this series, and the point was the good point about that lady was the accuracy, she prioritized the accuracy, fairness, and truthfulness, and the reporting, even if it means facing the pressure or backlash. Even that guy was inviting him in his house and showing some this gifts and favors, but that lady wasn't accepting that one. This is like just watch this series and you will see the whole story. And actually this topic that we are gonna covering this in this session, the ethics of a journalist, she has completely and fulfilled that topic. So my
yeah.
idea is to um, refuse
That you're
the.
yeah, you're absolutely correct, and I would second that. It's a wonderful story to watch. If you want to know how a journalist can stand by their integrity, and keep reporting, even if it is the strongest force of opposition in there. So yeah, thank you, Wyatt.
Sir, ma'am, regarding the previous questions that you asked about the caps and the favoritism,
Mm-hmm.
so question maybe the answer will be the same regarding the previous question. If you look for its base, so the journalist must not be under the favoritism of someone. So he can do everything if he want so legally and ethically. He can do everything, and he can change every situations of the politics. It may be the governmental, or it may be the public health related. So if the journalists perform their jobs as well and independently, not depend by the someone's or under the pressure of some organization or some system.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Hafizullah. Yeah. So this is an end of our game. I hope you all liked it. Uh, So thank you for participating, first of all. It was so nice to see every one of you sharing your thoughts. So going forward with our presentation, my question to you is that now that we have gone through some of these ethical situations, why do you think are ethics important in journalism? What makes it so important? I would like everyone to share their thoughts. You can write it on the chat, or you can unmute yourself and share your thoughts as well. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, am I audible to everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
you are.
ma'am.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want all of you to share your thoughts and pitch in on why do you think ethics are important in journalism? What are those key points that makes it so important?
Should I go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Sure, Divya.
I believe journalism is about putting a voice out there, being a voice for voiceless, sharing people's story. So while doing that, it's important to make sure that we shouldn't be hurting the audience. Like they are the listeners, so we should maintain some boundaries to make sure that we are like safely putting out whatever we have to say. If we'll be harsh, I don't know, people will feel connected towards us. So it's more about connectivity, and I think that for that reason, it's very important to have some boundaries when it comes to your words, or maybe courtesy. You should be very courteous when you are uh, doing something, you are advocating something.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Does anybody else want to say what they think about ethics in journalism?
But go ahead.
Ma'am,
Yes.
actually, there are so many points, and ethics are essential in journalism because a journalist should maintain the credibility and trust with the audience, ensure the accuracy and fairness in reporting, ma'am, protecting the resources, prevent the conflicts of interest and biasness. Whatever we have studied is like each and every points are here, and promote the transparency and accountability, and respect the privacy and dignity of the individuals. And ma'am, this is my idea. I think by adhering to the ethical standards, journalists can build the trust. So I think these are the ethics, and it's very important for journalists to be honest with the people when they're sharing, when they're providing the information. There should be a very honesty over there, and transparency is the most significant thing, which it's part of the ethical or ethics of the journalism. And
Yeah, you are also absolutely correct. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I see Somaya raising the hand. Hafizullah, I'll come to you after her. Somaya, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yes, ma'am. I want to share my idea. It's my idea. So I think that journalism ethic can spread the normal people to the personal journalists, or to the those who have some kind of respect at their self, and also at the truth, and also at the integrity. And also it's true that most journalism are the people that the other people trust them, because they say the truth, they avoid conflict, and also they have the responsibility, and they avoid harmful points, and also they keep the privacy of people, and that ethics separate them from those people that they claim that they are journalists, or they claim to say something important, and something like journalism say. So people trust them, people know them, people have the respect for them, and that's why ethics can separate the journalism from the other people who talk in the social media, or who write something randomly in the Google, or on other platforms. And that's why ethics can separate them. It's my idea.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Hafizullah.
Yes, ma'am. As Wahidur Rahman and Sumaya shared their ideas, and my ideas also are the same, but I want to add one point. So, as you know, the journalism or journalist is a person who are exposing or whom exposing the character of some people. It may be good or maybe wrong. So whenever you're trying to expose someone, you would like to introduce someone or some organizations or some systems to in the front of others, and you do not follow the ethics, and you do not following the wording ethics. It may be the other activity ethics. So it can affect very wrongly on your activities, and it may have the very bad reactions from side of the another. I mean, from the side of source which you would like to share. So the journalist must follow the two or three rules, and this is, by my opinion, which is very important. The one is the privacy of someone, if it's not necessary to expose. The second is the limitations, and third one is the what's called materialism. To do not be followed by the materialism. So it's the very important because journalist is an organization by which every people can trust and every people can hear their talks, and every person are following their instructions and following their speech, which are they hearing from the social media, radio, television. So they should be very truthful, very ethical, and be careful for their own jobs and sincere for their own organization and their own peoples.
That's a very nice thought, Bazullah. Every one of you are correct in here, and I also have a very beautiful opinion shared by Fareed. She's ethics in journalism are crucial. They keep reporters honest and ensure the public gets accurate, unbiased info. Without ethics, journalism would be a free for all, with reporters making up stories or distorting facts for clicks and attention. That would erode trust and undermine democracy. Ethic helps journalists stay focused on what matters, telling true stories that hold power and accountable. You have summarized this really well. Mahdi also shared his thoughts. Ethics in journalism are really important for several reasons. Building trust. Journalists have the responsibility of informing the public, following ethical guidelines, help build trust. When people believe that journalists are honest and fair, they are more likely to rely on their stories and insights. Absolutely correct. Respecting individual ethic also means respecting the rights and dignity of people involved in stories. This includes being careful about privacy and avoiding sensationalism. You're absolutely correct. And of course, getting the facts right. Ethical journalism emphasizes the importance of accuracy and fairness. Journalists need to verify their information and present different point of views, which helps the public get a clear picture of what's happening. Absolutely. All of you who have shared your opinions and thoughts, you all are absolutely correct. And through the discussion, we came to know that how important ethics stands as a role in our journalist. So a little bit knowing about that. So moving forward, we'll see. So ethics in our general term would be a system of moral principles. They affect how people make decisions and lead their lives. Now, in a general term, ethics is very subjective. What might be right for me might not be right for you. And that does not make you wrong, right? So it's very subjective. It might differ from my opinion to someone else's opinion. But when we come to journalistic ethics, they are the principles and standards that we need to ensure. So they are the fixed standards that we need to check mark that list. So to make sure, so it could be, it is a strict standard that we might follow as a journalist. A lot of different organizations have their own code of ethics, but they are all are kind of similar in nature, which follow this 5 principles. First is truth and accuracy. Second is minimizing harm. Third is independence. Fourth is fairness and balance. And fifth is accountability. So these are the 5 principles that we as journalists need to follow whenever we are reporting on any issue. So before I dive deep into all these 5 points, let's watch a video, okay? Which talks about all these 5 points. Let me know if you can hear it, okay?
Into a successful business.
Sure, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Ron.
There are about 400 codes of conduct.
Is it audible to everyone?
Is it audible?
Yes, ma'am.
It is audible, but the video is
Yes,
not
ma'am.
being seen.
The video is not coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me try again. Okay. Is video coming now?
Yes.
Okay.
around the world, covering all aspects of journalism. Some of them are very short, some of them are very long. But actually all of them are really focused on 5 key values for journalism. And the first of them is accuracy. I won't say truth, because truth is a very long word. It actually gets us into a discussion about really what is true and what is not true. But accuracy is very important. So therefore the first principle is no deceptive handling of the facts. We work in facts, so fact-based information. Secondly, there's the principle of independence. The work that you do is your own work, but it's not on behalf of anyone else. You're not there to be a spokesman for the government. You're not there to be a representative of a particular business group or a special interest group. You have transparency in what you do, so that when you are speaking and dealing with your audience and producing material, you're acting independently as an independent professional. Thirdly, there is the principle of impartiality. That is to say, you recognise that there's more than one side of a story. And very often there's more than 2 sides of a story. And as a journalist, you're responsible for looking and thinking about what are the other sides of this story. Here is one story that's being told, but what are the other opinions that I need to bring in to make the story whole? And then fourthly, there's the question of humanity. As a journalist, you're expected to show humanity. And what I mean by that is you're expected to be aware of the consequences of what you publish and what you broadcast. So you have to be aware that sometimes the words you use, the pictures you show can do damage. They can be harmful to people. It's not the job of a journalist to do undue harm. It's our job to protect people. And it's very important that when we are in reporting, we don't indulge in hate speech. We don't show obscene images. We don't show unnecessarily explicit images of violence and so on, because we are part of a humanitarian process, and that's what journalism should be. So humanity is a very important part of it. And fifthly is the issue of accountability. It's the one that's probably most difficult for journalists, and that's, we're not a humble group. We find it difficult to say sorry and to admit our mistakes, even though we can be lacerating in our criticism of others. But we have to do that. We have to engage with the audience, and we have to correct our mistakes, and we have to be prepared to provide remedies when we get it wrong and do damage. So these principles are pretty straightforward. Accuracy, independence, impartiality, humanity, and accountability. Those are the things that what make journalism different and distinct.
Okay. So yeah, he summarized it really well, all the key points in here, starting with truth and accuracy. And as he said, truth is very subjective. And sometimes if there is an immediate incident happened, truth might be very far from our reach, right? It's when the investigation happens, when you deep dive into it, when you get to know the truth. So what is in your hand is to be as accurate as possible. Whatever information that you are getting, it should be completely verified. You should have done your thorough research before writing, publishing, or reporting on any issue. So as journalists, we need to make sure that our reports are as accurate as possible. It might not be a complete true, because we also don't know what has happened, why it has happened. But in that situation, whatever information that we get, we should report that accurately. Second, that he said, is about humanity, and which is also similar to minimizing harm. We are not here to harm anybody's image, right? Especially when there is an issue with sex victims, juvenile crimes. It's our responsibility to not put their real names out there. We need to protect their identity so that we are not ruining their lives. So and a lot of countries do have their own regulations when it comes to naming the victims in their reports. So we should avoid that, right? So we should minimize the harm as much as we can, especially when we take the help of images to justify our reports. We should make sure that, of course, it's not obscene. Secondly, it does not affect the people who are going to read your report. It should support it, but it should not harm anybody. Third is our independence. Our reports should be fair. It should not be associated or it should not be written under pressure. It should avoid the conflict of interest. Okay. So as a journalist, we should avoid trying getting involved in any political activities so that we can report independently. And we keep, and sometimes what happens is that few articles that you're writing, you need to make sure that you have a clear distinction between a news, a feature article, or an advertisement. Sometimes a lot of journalists blurs the line between the two, but we should have that clear distinction between the two of them as well. So make sure that the articles are credible and free from any external influences. When it comes to fairness and balance, as we say, almost every story has two sides. So we should try to give equal representation, and if not equal, at least the opportunity for every side to tell their story. That means your report would be very objective, and people will have their own say by reading your report, but you should not put your stance or your opinion on it. And fifth is accountability. We are humans, journalists are humans. We will make mistakes, but where we can make ourselves correct is by accepting it and trying to improve on it. Our personal biases might come into our way, but if we have made a mistake, we should accept it and then move forward and make sure that we are not repeating that mistake again. So it's not that we are perfect human beings, right? So these are the 5 fundamental principles that we should keep in mind when it comes to ethical reporting. Do anybody have any questions?
Ma'am,
Mhm.
as you mentioned explained the last point, accountability.
Mhm.
So what can we conclude in the accountability? So it will be regarding gender, or maybe it's the rights of humans.
So accountability in the sense that, for example, you couldn't provide the credible sources, you still published the news anyway. And it comes to the notice that your sources aren't credible, or maybe your report might be wrong based on your sources. But to go out and to accept it, that you have made a mistake in here, and this might be the correct report. That's when you're keeping yourself accountable in that situation. And what happens with this is that people will still keep that trust in you because you have accepted your mistake and you're trying to improve it, right? Otherwise, if you don't do that, you will start losing the trust of people, or your colleagues, or people working, or people who are following your work. So when you do that, they still have that faith instilled in you. So there might be a lot of times where you might make mistakes, but that is what the accountability is all about. Hello. Does that
Ma'am,
answer your question?
could
Yeah.
you elaborate the impartiality a little bit, because I'm a bit confused with impartiality, and provide a good example for that.
Yeah. So impartiality is about fairness and balance. So, for example, if I give you that as a journalist, you are covering elections, right? For example, if you're covering elections, you have a manifesto of 2 different parties. But if you are criticizing one and you are just praising the other, is where you are being impartial, right? When you're reporting on their manifesto, it should have the equal balance of course, this might be good for the people, this might be bad for them. Similarly, it might be good for the people, it might be bad for them. That's when you are keeping a very objective sort of news in there, or an article in there, where you are telling both the sides, good and bad, but not just doing good about one thing and then bad about the other one, right? So if you are writing, when you do the research, you will be able to see that there would be 2 sides to that. There is a policy that is good in a way and it's a bad in a way. But you will have to report on both the aspects, and not just the good and not just the bad. I hope that answers your question. And of course, it should not have your personal opinion in that, because if it's there, it makes it a very biased sort of article, and except for it's an opinionated article.
Noted, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. So Maya?
Yes, ma'am, I have a question. So you
Sure.
say about the ethics and also the concepts of them. So what about the risk of having a danger, or you know the truth in Afghanistan, we know the truth, we see a lot of things, and we are witness about the situation, but we can't raise our hand or our voice because of government, because of a strict rule that we have, because of the danger that we face it. So, what about this situation? What should we do? Should close our eyes, or we should say something and go to jail? So, what's your
Yeah.
advice?
Of course. So I've never been in that situation, so I might not be able to understand what it would be like. But if I have to say it from my opinion, um, democracy or people get the voice if journalists speak on that, right? We have seen at so many places and warlike situations, or if there is a military coup that is happening. So there are journalists who still keep reporting, right? Because they want that voices to go out, to speak for the people who are suffering. But there's a lot of threat to our life, right? So that becomes a very, very personal stance, that what we want to do in that situation. And nobody is right or wrong, but it's just what your heart says and what your mind says, what you should do in that situation. Should you keep reporting, uh, considering that your life might be under threat, or you should just stay away from that to save your life? um, I'm very far from that experience, so I'm not sure what I would be doing in that situation. But it is a personal opinion of what you want to do. But all I would say is that democracy and voice exist where journalism exists.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So I have a question.
Sure.
Someone witness, someone talk about those who are currently doing this job, or saying the truth in Afghanistan, or any countries like Afghanistan. Are you witness like this person, or I didn't see anyone?
No, I haven't talked to anyone. It's just through the social media or the news that I follow. You still see news coming up from such places, right? And who is reporting? There are a lot of times that a journalist from a different country goes to a places which has a war-like situation to keep reporting on that, just to make sure. I've seen there's a war, for example, there's a journalist that I keenly follow. Uh, Ukraine had a war-like situation, is still having, but there's a lot of things happening right now. There's a journalist from India who has went there, and he's covering those aspects. Although there is a threat to his life, you know, we don't know what will happen the next day. So I've been following certain journalists out there who do go to different countries to cover, but that is everyone's personal opinion, and there is no right and wrong in there. Yes, Sally.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, ma'am. I would like to ask if, as a journalist, are
Mhm.
there guidelines which say you cannot do this, you cannot report on such kind of things, you cannot write on such kind of things? I'd just like to know if there are any, like, I would say, do's and don'ts.
Mhm. So yeah, a lot of organizations. Are you talking about organizations or governments, Sally?
Generally, as a journalist, whether government or
So yeah,
Can
a
you
lot
hear
of
me?
yeah, I can hear. I just wanted to get a little clarification that are you asking in a perspective of an organization that you're working with who has code of conduct, do's and don'ts, or you're asking from a government perspective?
Okay, so I meant as generally whether you're
Mhm.
working for an organization, a private organization, or you're working for the government, but generally as a journalist, are you given guidelines that you are not supposed to report on such things? You're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to write on such things. So do they have guidelines that sets them apart as a
So
journalist
yeah,
that you cannot talk about this, you cannot write about this?
okay. So when it comes to organizations, I've not seen very strict guidelines on what to report and what to not. Organizations do have their own ethical code of conduct, which will reflect these principles itself. Might be in a different, presented in a different way. So they have their own code of conduct, an ethical code of conduct. When it comes to government, it depends on is it a sort of democracy or communist, or if you go to North Korea, like they have a very, very strict policy. A lot of for example, China, they don't even have their own. Uh, they don't allow the other countries media to go and cover. They have their own independent media who puts news out, whatever is in there. So if you are talking about a government, um, I think you might have to follow if you what they are saying. If they are whatever rules that they make, a lot of government puts strict rules and regulations on media, but which goes against the democracy. So then it's up to a journalist, subjective view of what they want to do in that situation, to follow it or to move out and keep reporting on that, because there will always be a threat if you go against the government. So it all comes to personal opinion and stance. But for organizations, they do have certain policies, and it differs from organization to organization, right? So that's when you might have to take a decision. If there are some strict policies, will you be able to adhere to that or not? For example, I used to work in a digital news portal, but I sort of saw that they have a very, very little bit of a biased stance on a certain ideology. So when I used to write my reports, they used to make changes to that so that it gives a little bit lineage to that, but which was against my ethical views, right? Because I wanted to report what is right and rather not alter that story. I eventually left that organization because it went. So if you're working for an organization, you have to make sure that your thoughts also align with them. But you will see if you work for an organizations, they will have their own ethical code of conduct. But I haven't seen very strict policies around that. I hope
Okay,
that
ma'am. Thank
answers
you
your
so much.
question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Thank you.
now that we have known all the principles in here, I also have another video of a journalist where she's sharing her thoughts into these ethical situational questions.
For Global Ethics Day 2018,
Is it audible to everyone?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Council staff and affiliates discuss ethics in action.
I think in many ways, my profession of journalism hasn't seen greater ethical challenges in my lifetime as they do now. I think for a lot of us journalists, it's trying to find whether they view themselves as objective observers of fact and history, or whether they view themselves as activists. I think in this environment, there's such confusion over what truth is. And journalists need to be able to call out falsehoods without letting their own biases play in. And yet at the same time, not be sort of morally relativist about clear rights and wrongs and clear ethics. They need to call out those falsehoods, but they have to do it in a way where they maintain their professional integrity. My personal ethical policy as a journalist is twofold. One, not to do unnecessary harm. I think journalists are competitive and they're looking for scoops just like anyone else. And our jobs essentially are to hold power to account. And I think in the process of doing that, we need to make sure not to do harm to individuals that don't deserve harm to be done on them. And I think that we as journalists have to realize that what we say has to be extremely precise. It needs to reflect accuracy as opposed to opinion, unless we're saying we're opinion journalists. And that's one part of my own personal policy as a journalist. My other personal ethical policy as a journalist is extreme radical self-awareness of my own biases. Journalists are human. We grew up in cultures with backgrounds that inform our own opinions. I always go into a story, if I happen to have an opinion on it, extremely aware of what that bias might be within me, and I try to correct for it. And I think the best journalists can do that, and I trust them to do so. And I think that's the most important thing in trying to regain the trust of the public in journalistic institutions, is just knowing that the best journalists are actually very aware of their biases, and they really do try earnestly to be fair. I think journalists every day they file a story have to make ethical decisions when it comes to their sources and who they source their stories to, when it comes to the stories they choose to tell, whether it be stories that benefit society or harm society or a community. I think they have to be ethical in their choice of language, and whether they're going to feed into polarities that exist in our current environment, or whether they're going to choose to be the objective, fair, accurate journalists that we all started out striving to be. I think where I see the greatest moral leadership is in the unsung local newspaper reporters. There are a lot of communities whose local papers have been devastated by digital media, and yet those underpaid, unsung heroes to me are the local journalists that continue to cover the city council meetings and local crimes and local government and local businesses, and are doing their jobs in a way that isn't gaining national attention and yet is so core to why journalism matters in a democracy.
So she's a journalist and she shared her thoughts on some of those ethical questions in there. So we live in a digital age now, right? And digital age, journalism in a digital age has its own challenges when it comes to ethics. First is fake news. An MIT study has reported that fake news travels 10 times faster than actual true reporting. So just imagine that there is a fake news, somebody has put it out and it spreads like fire. So it becomes an ethical challenge for us. And the news has become so fast-paced that it's 24/7. It's available on our smartphones. The accessibility to a news is so close to us that it's very important to make sure that whatever source that we are taking, whatever we are reporting is accurate. And we are not someone who is fueling to that fake news. Our first step is to verify whatever we are going to report on. It's sometimes it's not the fault of journalists as well. What happens is that there's so much competition around on who reports it first, and that's when the ethics of making sure that our reports are accurate, it actually goes under the table. So as a journalist, our first step is to whatever we see, make sure that it's fair, accurate, verified, and then only report it. You might be late. You might join that line late of reporting on that particular topic, but at least it's accurate and you're not fueling to a fake news. The second thing, which has become a big challenge, is clickbait. So clickbait is actually the headlines that you see on websites when you are scrolling through news. And of course, you see that they are very tempting, hoping that you will click on that and open that news story. But what happens is that the headline and the content inside the news, sometimes they do not match or they are misleading. They mislead the people on what they are trying to say. And so the culture of clickbait is something that we as a journalist need to, go against it. And I'll just show you some of those examples of those misleading headlines. Let's see this first headlines, which says that France sees 70 cases linked to school days after reopening. Hundreds of thousands of students returns to class in past weeks, which says that these cases are linked due to the reopening of schools. But what's still inside the report is that the incubation of the period is usually several days, and the students might be infected before the school might have reopened. So what you read from the first two lines, what you are anticipating, is actually very different from what the actual news is. A very nice example is the second one, which says coronavirus is causing deadly new inflammatory fever in some children, which is funded by a British study. It means you are connecting coronavirus to an inflammatory fever that is happening. But what actually is that a deadly inflammatory syndrome has similar symptoms to Kawasaki disease. And it is talking about a different disease altogether, but the coronavirus is a trending topic. It's May 2020, and it makes it very, very lurid to click on that and to read about it. But actually, it's very misleading. The next question is that, so the next headline is that if you snore, you could be 3 times more likely to die of coronavirus, doctors warn. So if I'm a snoring sleeper, I will get scared that maybe I am more likely to die to a coronavirus, and I will click on that and I'll try to read through it, right? But what the actual report says is that those who have been diagnosed with loud snoring condition, which is obstructive sleep apnea, are being urged to take extra precautions. So it is actually a very technical medical condition. But people will start linking themselves that maybe I am the one who is the next in the line. The next headline says that travelers set to get free test kits, which is also during the time of COVID. That means if I'm about to travel recently, I will assume that I will be getting free test kits from government. But what the actual news report is that ministers are considering giving travelers free COVID test kits to take abroad to save the hassle and cost of arranging one before flying to home. So I might be in that assumption that I will be getting a free test kit, but this is still under consideration. So sometimes what journalists do, that they create this very, very attractive headlines, which does not match the reports. And you will see this clickbait culture and a lot of news websites. If you click on one, you will definitely find one. And that is something that we have to fight against it. Whatever we are putting on our headlines should also match the content that we are writing, so that we are not misleading people. This is where also people start losing trust in the work that we are doing. The third thing is privacy. As we have the access of information, it's very important that we also protect the privacy of people. If I am getting a news about an incident that has happened of a sexual violence against a girl, I will not immediately go and publish it with the name. I will still keep it anonymous. Although I have the access of information, I have got that news from the parents of the child, maybe. But I will still try to protect the information, the sources that gives us the information, right? We also have to protect their identity as well. So privacy is also a big issue in this digital age. And fourth is our personal biases, or if I not say personal, biases in general. I'll show you a little article on the biases. It could be personal, it could be organizations, sometimes it against the government as well. And it is also against the countries. This is a research done where New York Times have consistently written against India, I would say, where they have written articles like India coronavirus, round the clock mass cremations. Such news have not been published for different various other countries, which some and the continuous publications of such news by the Western media makes it an assumption and makes an identity that they are having a bias against that. And this is when you are not writing your articles objectively, when you are not reporting on every issue, but you are only targeting one section. A very beautiful example that I will show you is this I am not sure if you have seen this, but this is a little cartoon that they published when India was doing their Mars mission, which says that there is an allied space clubs. And also when they announced the budget for that, they showed the image in this way. So sometimes it's not just writing, it's the image that you are using, which shows a certain biasness on a particular ideology or an opinion, right? So as a journalist, we have to make sure that we are not portraying such biases in our reporting, because then it gives a general idea of, okay, this news organization only reports on this side. And I might not read it because they are not objective. So now that we have known about the biases, it is a very, very important topic when it comes to when our ethics comes into play. And there are a lot of technical terms around biases in journalism, but the two very brief that we need to understand is the personal bias and the organizational bias. A personal bias is based on an individual journalist's life. I might, for example, I am born and brought up in India. I have followed a certain religion. I have seen my family following a certain political ideology. So 22 years of my life, I have grown in that environment, which has created certain unconscious bias in me, right? So if and then I become a journalist, and if I have to try reporting against that things that I have learned for 22 years of my life, there are high chances that my biases might come into play. I might not be able to use some of the hard words. I might be very soft to that topic, or I would only report the only good things because I've only heard good things my whole life, and I'm not able to accept that, okay, this might also be wrong. So, and it also applies to every one of you. You are from different countries, from a different culture. So you have a lot of different cultural contexts to a lot of subjects. And that's when the personal biases come into play. So as a journalist, we need to be very aware of those personal biases. The second is the organizational bias. So if you are working with a particular organization, they have their own, as I said, ethical code of conduct, but they also have their own editorial policies. They also have their own stance on different topics, which might be true. So there will also be a lot of, so whenever you're writing an article, it will first go through an editor who will make sure that your article is under the editorial policy. And this editorial policy is different in different organizations, which might reflect a little bit of bias. As I said, I was working with an organization which did had one, which I figured it out while I was writing my reports, which got edited later. So a lot of organizations have their own policies where they show where they might have biases. So you have to make sure that the organizations that you're working with do not have a political affiliations, right? As a journalist also, you should not have a political affiliations, and you should be aware of all these aspects whenever you are reporting, so that you will be able to write it very objectively. So you know all the biases, but how do you tackle it? Because if biases are not mitigated, it will eventually reflect in whatever you are writing. So these are the 6 strategies which will help you to mitigate those biases in your reporting. First is an extremely self-awareness. Ask yourself before writing that, do I have an opinion on this topic? Does this topic affects me? If yes, then you will be able to sort of eliminate those biases from your article. But if you are not aware, unconsciously, you will include that, and then it will be in form of an opinion. Then you will not be able to write it objectively. So first step is to be extremely self-aware of your own personal biases. Second is diversify sources. So if you're writing on a particular topic, which might have you might have a biased opinion in, try to diversify your sources, because if you do that, you will try to get different opinions, different sides of the stories. And that's when you will be able to touch on to different points and make it a very objective. Third is fact-checking and verification. Whatever your opinion might be, go with the facts, because facts are always right. In your bias, it might be wrong, but that's what the fact says. So always go with the facts, and that is why you eliminate those bias. Fourth is peer reviews. If you remember, if you're a child, you are writing an art, you are writing a little poem, or you're writing a little essay, you make sure that somebody else reads it, right? You make sure that, okay, is it all correct? That's what you also can do with your articles as well. Make sure that you get it read by a friend or an editor, or you're a colleague, you're working in organizations. So if there are any unconscious bias in there, they will be able to identify it for you. So always make sure you do a peer review. Fourth is try to use a very neutral tone. So if you're writing an article which has a lot of praiseworthy words, right? Or you show a lot of anger by using very harsh words, that's when the tone comes into play. So if I'm reading an article, the tone will sometimes try to justify your opinion. But if you try to use very neutral language, you will keep it very objective, which is just facts. And fourth is acknowledge. If you have a personal bias in something, if you have unconsciously written a biased article, acknowledge it. The steps starts with the acceptance that you might have. So if you are, so be transparent, because transparency builds credibility. So these are the 6 strategies that you can follow to minimize those biases in your reporting. Let's see what different journalists have to say on how do they minimize their bias. Is it audible to everyone?
Yes, but it is not audible.
Sometimes when people say, are you guys completely neutral? No, we're not robots. Journalists are human beings, and I think every human being has,
Video is not visible.
whether it's bias or prejudge or however we're...
Video is not working?
No.
Okay.
Audio is
Let
And
me...
coming.
video is not working.
Okay, no problem. I will... Is video visible to everyone?
Yes, now it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's visible now.
We have influences in our lives, so we see things different.
Let's start again.
Sometimes when people say, are you guys completely neutral? No, we're not robots. Journalists are human beings, and I think every human being has, whether it's bias or prejudge or however we're brought up, we have influences in our lives, so we see things differently. The best thing that we do is just, one, acknowledge that we're not all the same. We don't want to be all the same. We want diverse people in the newsroom. But also there be what's fair. I think that's more rational to me, is because as a human, we all have our biases of various things. It can be based on religion, gender, age, worldview, politics, a lot of things. But when you're talking about reporting, hard news reporting, is what do I know and what can I verify?
Everyone comes to journalism, their work, whatever their work is, with a worldview based on their own life experiences. So the fact that I am a Black woman influences my worldview. The fact that I'm a Southerner influences my worldview. And I think that they can ultimately make reporting richer. But those things, when you're in a place that is a strong journalistic institution, come up against, your editor and your editor's, worldview or unconscious bias. I think what we do for one another is sort of find holes and blind spots. And also, as a reporter, because I'm aware that I am all of those things and that they influence my worldview, it's also about reading widely from other perspectives, interviewing people.
Well, one thing you don't do is you allow one source story to run. So stories, before they hit the paper, before they're published online, we're required to talk to more than one source in a story. So sources on another side of the issue will check. I think that they check and balance each other's biases out.
I think the way that you confront bias through journalistic tools is really by looking at what people are saying to you and really trying to verify them independently. So even if you feel sorry for someone who's grieving their lost child, if they tell you that they've never had a run-in with the law, that they were a straight-A student, before I print that, I want to go try to see if I can figure out, did he have a record? I want to figure out what school did he go to? Do his teachers also say that? So even though it can be in some ways kind of cold to think, oh, you have to go verify what a mother's telling you, the same way I try to verify if a police officer says this officer was clean, he never had any issues. I want to FOIA and I want to go through a Freedom of Information Act and say, well, let me see those papers for myself. Let me verify for myself what the papers say and what your department has said about him. So I think you have to really just look at both point of views, because even though a grieving mother doesn't mean to lie to you, it could be that she's just really overcome with grief, and everyone thinks their child is an amazing person, and everyone wants to think, especially if you've hired someone and they've been in your police force, you want to think that they understand and respect the integrity that you gave them and that you hope that they're in line with the rest of the department. I think that I understand that I'm a Black woman with an afro, and that when I'm asking people questions that they look at me and think, okay, she must be a protester sympathizer, or she must understand and have all these different experiences. But I think that I have a brother who's a police officer and I have a brother who's also had run-in with the law. And I think that in both those cases, I have this idea of what people go through. I have family members who are out on the line, who are risking their lives for people's freedoms, for people's safety. And I also have family members who feel like they've somehow been targeted by police officers. So I think in my own personal reporting, I have those two competing things. And I think that that's kind of why I try to report the way I report, because I think I'm not blind. I know what I look like. I know my race. So I don't try to ever dance around the fact that I'm Black American. And I don't try to ever tell people like, oh, I don't know anything about this. Who would know what racial profiling is? I'm like, no, I understand what racial profiling is. I understand what Black American men feel like in this country. But I also, surprisingly to some people, understand what police officers go to and talk to people and love someone who is out there with a gun trying to save people's lives.
People are biased. The process is not. We go out, we talk to multiple people. We look at a story from multiple different angles. We fact check. I have editors who scrutinize my work. You you trust the process, and the process it's designed to strip away, all of those biases that otherwise could find their way into a story. This isn't something that we take lightly. We're not, you can't be so arrogant that you think you're going to go into a situation and that you know everything there is to know about it. It just doesn't work like that. I mean, I think reporters, are curious people in general. So you go into a story and we want to hear new perspectives. We want to piece things together and get a complete picture of something.
Part of our job is to give people as much information as we can, to give it to them in a fair and reasonable way. And when you talk about trying to keep track of our biases, or how do we keep track of our biases, we can do it by trying to disconnect a little emotionally. We can do it by pursuing direct, relentless questioning of people that we might like and respect. And it also means that if we find good attributes and a good story with somebody that we don't like and don't respect, we need to be willing to tell that story too.
Ma'am, you are not audible. Your mic
Ma'am, your
is-
voice is not audible. Guys, is it just for me or is all of you guys?
Hello. I'm sorry,
Yes, ma'am.
I was on mute, so I'm sorry about that. So I hope everyone liked that video on from different perspective of different journalists. And so we are almost towards the end. So I would just like to say that journalism is not a profession or it's not a trade. It's a crusade for truth. And we are actively pursuing to tell truth to the people and to give voice to the voiceless. Okay, thank you everyone. So if you have any questions, if you want to discuss anything, the floor is open. I'll just stop sharing. Yeah. So that's all from my end.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone, please, if you have questions, leave your question in chat or please open your mics if you can, or raise your hands so we can take turns.
From my side, thank you so much, ma'am. I've learned a lot of things actually from you, and the videos were so much effective, and also that questions, like it was like questionnaire, so we enjoyed so much. Thank you so much for having such kind of interactive session, ma'am. It's pleasure to meet you and learn a lot of things, ma'am. I would like to have your LinkedIn account plus, ma'am, your suggestions. So it's not like a question, it's like a suggestion, ma'am. I would like to have so many suggestions because, ma'am, we have just 16 weeks for our journalism journey. So just give some advice within 16 weeks. What are the most important tools and what are the important advices that you are like thinking that is suitable for us? I want you to just give us 2 or 3 advices, like for being a journalist as a beginner level. So if you have any good ideas, any experience you can share, so that might be very
Sure.
good.
So just a few suggestions, which is from my personal experience that I want to share, is that when you start doing journalism, there is no fixed thing that you join and then you do it. It starts from you, right? I started by writing articles on the issues that affected me, that mattered to me. So I used to write on I created my own blog page where I used to write my own articles. And then eventually people started reading it. That's when one of my article was, I put it on LinkedIn, and it was seen by Anjan sir. He's the editor of Mahabahu. And he really liked my article, and he said that if you can share it with me, and he published it in a book. After that, I wrote multiple articles which got pitched to him, and he published on his profile. I also used to do ghost pitching to different news media. That I do want to write on this article. This is the little brief about that. So you can also send different pitches to different news portals. So they also have a space where you can submit an article to them, which will be reviewed by their editor. So you can start it from your end itself, right? So once you start that, you will see that you will get to know a lot of experiences. You'll get to know a lot of perspective from different people that you will connect to, and which will eventually help to build your that journalist journey. Because at every article that you write, it will help you to improve even more. So I think my suggestion is that if you're passionate about something, if you're passionate about a certain subjects, you can just start writing on that. It does not matter. You create your own blog page, publish on it. It starts with one person who will read, but then it will eventually reach to a lot of people out there. So I think you can start from your end as well.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. And we really like your session. It's very interactive, and the way you put your knowledge out there, it was really concise and crisp. So I think everyone really enjoyed the way they questioned, and we really look forward to connect with you. And we also want you to be a part of be with us again in future if that's possible for you. So yeah.
Thank you. I would just like to take a moment to thank you all for being a wonderful, wonderful group of students. I really enjoyed. I was a bit nervous, but I saw your enthusiasm, and it was all good. I really enjoyed taking this session as well. So I would like to start thanking Dr. Maheen and Anjan Sharma, who gave me this opportunity to connect with you all and to speak on this important topic as well. I would like to thank Entrepreneurship Ecole for giving me this platform. So thank you all, and I wish you all the very best for your future endeavors. You will all do great in your jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Same to you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Have a good day.